call Carrie Thurber.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Harry Thurber, Kerrithurber.
Thank you.
Ms. Thurber, where do you live?
I live in Somerset, Massachusetts.
I'm having trouble hearing.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You live in Somerset, Massachusetts. Who do you live with?
I live with my husband, Justin, and my 3 kids.
And your 3 kids, are they in school?
They are, yes.
When did you start? Well, what's your education like?
I went to Rhode Island College for music ed and a bachelor's in music.
You have to speak up, ma'am. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Initially.
Try to just keep talking into the mic.
Okay. So I received my bachelor's from Rhode Island College in 2000.
And when did you start working after school?
I actually worked in Taunton for a couple of months, and then I ended up leaving when summer break came, and then I started working at Barrington Middle School September of 2001 as a long-term sub.
I'm still having, just, you could just enunciate a little bit. It's
Sure.
just not carrying that well.
Okay. So I was hired in September of 2001 as a long-term sub at Barrington Middle School for a chorus of music.
And then eventually did that become a permanent full-time position?
It did, yes.
Okay. Roughly when?
After that school year, so it would have, the position became permanent in the 2002-2003 school year.
And up until you were suspended on November 2nd of 2021, did you continuously work in Barrington as a music teacher?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Was it always at the middle school?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about what you did as a music teacher in Barrington Middle School?
Yeah, I worked with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade singers. So they signed up for my class. So taught them to sing properly, taught them to read music. In addition, I also taught general music classes as well.
Did you participate in any performances with your students?
Yes, I did a lot. We did a lot of performance for the community. We performed at Rhode Island State House, Nell's conferences, Swanton Wong, Barrington tree lighting every year, and different community events.
Was there something called Arts Alive Barrington that you participated
Sorry, what?
in?
I didn't get it.
Was there something called Arts Alive Barrington that you participated in?
Yes, yes.
How did that come about?
The artistic director, Dina Davis, came to the middle school one day, I think it was sometime in 2014, and asked if I would help them and be their musical director for any of the shows that they did at the middle school.
And did you do anything with Rhode Island College music practicum?
Yes.
And what was that?
So what the practicum is college students who are music ed majors, and before their student teaching, they get a little bit of what they call practicum experience. So they come in to a classroom, they observe a teacher and learn from the teacher, and then they get to practice teaching a little bit with students.
Okay. You heard the testimony from Mr. Missouri that you were a highly qualified teacher for your entire tenure, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Never had any disciplinary issues?
No.
What was your relationship with students and parents over the course of the 20 years?
It was excellent. It was excellent. My students and I had an awesome rapport. and sing with parents.
You receive cards and letters from them over the years,
Many, yes.
supportive and thankful for what you've done.
Yes.
How's this action by the committee, how's it affected you?
Well, I'm not making music with students anymore. That's really kind of a hole in my heart, because that's a love that I have, is to work with kids and to make them better musicians, better people, and what's missing.
You heard testimony that allowing you to continue to work with these students would be an under burden on the district, in part because there could be a disruption to their education if you had a quarantine for a period of time. Are you aware of the impact that your suspension and termination has had on the students in your classroom since you left?
Yes, they've had, for the 2 months that I was on suspension, they had either teacher coverage or a daily sub in there. They had no music instruction whatsoever during that time.
I'm going to move to strike for a lack of foundation.
Sustained, Mr.
How are you aware of this?
Just from what students and parents and colleagues would tell me.
You have to speak up.
I can't hear
Trailed
her.
off.
Can you say that again?
From what students and parents and colleagues would tell me.
Okay. You have anything else you want to add?
No, thank you.
I have nothing further.
I just have a couple of questions for Ms. Thurber, not many. Ms. Thurber, since you have been not working for Barrington, have you had other employment?
Objection, Williams.
Mr. Picciarelli opened the door.
I can't hear you.
Mr. Picciarelli, you opened the door. You've talked about opening the door, and when the other side opened the door, I let you go through. This time you opened the door. Ms. Ravel can ask the question. Can I have a read back?
Have you had other employment?
Yes, I've been working as a substitute teacher at Barrington Christian Academy.
Has that work been continuous? In other words, you work every day?
Yes,
Okay. And is that a position that is long-term or short-term?
it is long-term, just until the end of this school year.
Okay. And in that capacity, do you work with students in delivering choral instruction?
No, I do not.
Okay, what do you do?
Right now, I am just supervising Spanish classes. They're doing Spanish online. So they're learning through an online program, and I am in the classroom just supervising and making sure that they're doing their work.
Okay. Do you have any Spanish certification?
No.
And you said that you had received information from students, parents, and colleagues regarding the ongoing experience in the classroom.
Yes.
Okay. And what students have you received information? What parents?
I'm going to object. Do we really need to know the names of people?
And again, you
opened-
They're under me.
I'm going to direct, if she doesn't feel comfortable answering.
You gotta start again.
I'm sorry. If she doesn't feel comfortable answering, I'm going to tell her she doesn't have to answer. I don't care what you do about it.
What parents have you put the students aside? What parents have you spoken with?
If you feel comfortable.
I don't feel comfortable answering that.
And for the record, I'm going to direct the witness to answer the question.
And I'm directing her now.
And what colleagues have you talked with?
I'm going to, again, if you're not comfortable answering that, don't answer.
And I'm going to direct the witness to answer, and I want the witness to understand that the committee can draw a negative inference from your refusal to answer it.
You can advise the committee anything you wish.
So what colleagues have reported to you the status of the students?
My partner, Dan Yankowitz.
Last name, I'm sorry.
Yankowitz.
Okay, has Ms., what's her last name?
Yankowitz.
Has she reported that your position has been filled by a teacher from East Greenwich?
She has, yes.
And do you know that teacher who took your position?
Not, I've met her.
Was she a student intern here for some period of time?
She was, yes.
She's quite good, right?
I don't know. She was a student teacher at the time.
And you have sought unemployment benefits in addition to having a job as a substitute teacher, correct?
I'm going to object this.
I'll sustain that.
Thank you.
I have no further questions.
I have nothing further. Oh, Ms. Hines?
Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Stephanie Hines, Stephaniehes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Where do you live?
Reside in Cranston.
And who do you live with?
I live with my husband and my children who are 2, 5, and 7.
Ms. Hines, what's your education background?
So I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education and psychology. I went straight on to obtain my master's degree in reading specialization. Through that, I completed a very intense Gordon Gillingham training. It was 45 hours of classroom work and 100 hours of supervised teaching. And that is, I will want to state, different than some other programs that people are trained through.
What do you mean by that?
So this is a very highly prescriptive one-on-one Gordon Gillingham, and whereas I guess the prescriptiveness of it and the individualization is different versus taking a comprehensive course for 30 hours on how to implement it for a classroom.
Okay. Does that specialized training, is that something that school districts covet and do special education reading specialists?
Yes.
Do you belong to something known as IMSLEC?
Sure, so that's it stands for the National Multisensory Structured Language Education Council. It goes by IMSLEC, and it accredits different organizations that kind of understand reading and the science of reading. And to be in good standing, you need to complete 30 hours of professional development every 3 years, in which I have. I do remain in good standing, despite that training being 12 years ago.
Okay. What was your employment history? Where did you first start teaching?
I first started in Lynn, Massachusetts, and I moved along throughout Massachusetts. My final place in there was in Mansfield. I was laid off there due to lowest seniority. I obtained a position in Cumberland, and again was laid off due to lowest seniority and budget cuts. And then I came to Barrington in August of 2016 looking for a place that had consistent budgets, that I saw Gordon Gillingham listed on the school spring, and I thought that's my place.
Did you actually have another job offer at the same time from another district?
I did.
What district?
I was offered a position in Barrington.
Okay. They don't have a vaccine mandate in Barrington, do they?
No, not that I'm aware of.
But you're wishing you went there instead. What's your employment history been like since you were in Barrington?
All evaluation cycles, I was effective I never had any concerns about job performance.
And what did you do? What was your function? at the district?
So, as a reading specialist, I taught one-on-one or small groups in grades 4 and 5 at Hampton Meadows. Sometimes my skills were used as a more qualified person to deliver.
Sometimes what? I'm sorry.
My skills were used in Orton Gillingham to deliver instruction to special education students if the special educator was not OG certified. I worked collaboratively with my teaching partner. We administered various assessment measures. We looked at student data. We determined their gaps. We decided, amongst others, what the best method of intervention was. And I provided Tier 3 intervention.
You also provide Orton Gillingham services to students?
I did, yes.
Was that because you were the more qualified person to provide that, of the reading specialist?
Not other than not within the reading specialists, but if there were some special educators who had not undergone that training, I would be added as
Oh, I see.
someone on, yeah.
Since you've left your position, are you aware of what's happened to your caseload of students since you left?
Yes,
How are you aware of that?
through my teaching partner.
And you heard Mr. Masori's testimony about why there were 2 reading specialists because of the caseload?
Mhm.
You have to say it,
Yes.
And you heard his testimony with regard to what happened after you left. What's your understanding of what happened after you left?
My understanding is that my position was initially advertised as a long-term sub position, and the district was unable to obtain a substitute teacher. What that meant is that my caseload was not serviced until January, when things were able to be reorganized.
Is that because the person that you talked with had such a heavy caseload she couldn't take on those
So
extra
she had
students?
a heavy caseload. Also, in past administrative decisions, there were a lot of students placed in one classroom. So it was just impossible to reach without pulling from the core and specials. That's my understanding. That's not what I've been told, just my impression of what happened.
Do you have any information as to whether students that you were servicing have been going either without service or being serviced by people who are not certified special ed teachers?
No.
No. Do you have anything else you'd like to add? I mean, other than this is, I imagine, just taking credit to a lot.
Yeah, I reached out to my past principal today, actually, just to ask permission if I had the chance to share. I had prepared another statement, and then I found out that we didn't get to talk. And I asked him if he was okay sharing this, and I explained to him, or what it was I had a conversation with him in October. And in that conversation, I said, I just don't know how to explain how this feels. The last time I felt like this was when I lost my dad 3 years ago. And my principal said, well, Stephanie, that's because this is a loss. This is a loss for you, this is a loss for our school, and this is a loss for your students in our district. And I would just ask you to think about that. It's not just about a termination, it's about people, it's about students who we're all here for. That's why we do the jobs that we do. Thank you.
There's just one other item I wanted to clarify. The superintendent testified that he talked to your building principal, and he mentioned somebody by the name of McGee. Is that correct?
Yes, so Tracy McGee was my principal all years prior until this year. She resigned in August, I think, of 2021. So my principal this year, or my standing principal, was Gino Sangiuliano.
So when Mr. Masori testified, he talked to Ms. McGee, that wasn't possible either. This was misunderstood or was not accurate in his testimony, right?
Correct.
Nothing further.
I have a few questions. Ms. Hines, when you were suspended, you understood that you had your job to go back to if you were vaccinated, right?
Yes.
And you were receiving health insurance through that 2-month period through the district, correct?
Objection is relevant.
She's talking about, yeah. You were receiving health insurance through the district, correct?
That is correct.
And in fact, you received health insurance for another month in January, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, you're receiving health insurance, I believe, through this month.
Objection is relevant.
I'll sustain that.
I mean, come on.
Okay.
It's not even
I'll sustain the-
So in that 2-month period between November 1st and December 31st, you knew that the district, because it was holding the position for you, was not able to find qualified or highly qualified as you are substitute teachers, right?
There are not many long-term reading specialist positions posted. As I looked myself, there was one that I saw posted in Lincoln. So my impression is that anyone that was looking for a position would have gone and applied for that job.
So I'm interested in what you're saying is there aren't many long-term substitutes, so it's hard to fill. You would agree with me that it's hard to fill a position for a short-term basis. Someone wouldn't want to leave, say, a position in Burrville just to come for a couple of months, right?
If they had a full-time position somewhere else, yes, I could see that.
Right. And you understand that, you did understand that the position was being held so that if you got vaccinated, you could come back to it, right?
I did, but the vaccination is not an option for me.
Right. So you made a decision to carry out your feelings despite the fact that there was clearly an impact on the kids, right?
If I could just, for the record, the decision to suspend and terminate these individuals did not challenge their significantly held religious beliefs.
So that
It's
wasn't my question.
stipulated, therefore, it is stipulated for the record that she has a sincerely held religious belief, and it's not the proper subject of examination. And I didn't bring it up in direct.
Overruled, because that's not what the question was.
Yeah, that's not my question. My question is, you pointed out with some passion that the children were suffering because you weren't in the classroom, right?
So I didn't understand the timeline for these hearings. I knew that we submitted an appeal, and I was hopeful that this would happen sooner than March 31st. I had a feeling that, I guess a hope, that we would have a hearing and that a decision would be reversed.
Okay. And in that 2-month period when you were on unpaid leave, you never came to Mr. Masori and suggested, say, let's wait out the year and hold my position because I want to come back. You never proposed that, did you?
I didn't know that was an option.
Oh. Did you read the letter that was sent to you on November 2nd, which said that if you had ideas to please report or come to Mr. Masori? Did you see that communication?
I did, but I thought you were talking about after I was already determined to be terminated.
Well, it said if in this period of time of unpaid leave between November 2nd and December 31st, you have some other idea so we don't have to terminate you, please come forward. That's what it said, didn't it? Did say that.
Yes, I think so, yes.
Yeah, it did. And you've been communicating with your colleague about your position, or the persons who filled the position in that 2-month period, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you knew they were not great, right?
I did not say that the person who was hired was not qualified.
Okay. And you know that now there is a person from East Greenwich who's filling that position,
Yes, I do.
because the position has become a permanent position after January 1st.
Yes.
And do you have employment now?
I do.
And where do you work?
I am currently working as a student support specialist at Barrington Christian Academy.
And is that a full-time position?
Yes.
Have you applied to be a teacher in any other school district?
Not at the moment, no.
Have you looked for any openings to see if there were openings for OG work at any other school district?
I have looked through School Spring, but there are no districts that specifically state OG or Gillingham training recommended.
Any reading specialist options?
There are some at a middle school level for the following school year, not for this current school year.
For 21, 22, 23?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
And nothing further. Call Ms. Diorio.
Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Brittany Diorio. Brittany, B-R-I-T-T-A-N-Y, Diorio, D-I-O-R-I-O.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Diorio, where do you live?
I live in Barrington.
Have you always lived in Barrington?
I have.
You grew up here?
Yep.
Okay. Who do you live with?
My husband Andrew, who also grew up in town, and my two children, ages 6 and 9.
So, would it be fair to say that not only are you an employee here, or were an employee here in Barrington, but you personally knew some of the people you worked with,
I did.
including the superintendent
I did.
and your building principal?
Yes.
What's your education background?
I went to Rhode Island College. I have an early childhood degree, grades pre-K to 2. I have a special ed degree, mild to moderate grades K through 8. And then in 2019, I went back to get my master's degree from URI, and that was in the areas of TESOL, which is teaching English to speakers of other languages. I also got a degree in dual language immersion, and I earned 2 additional certifications, English as a second language teacher, grades pre-K to 2, and bilingual dual language pre-K to 2.
Okay. What's been your work history as a teacher?
I started my career in Pawtucket. I was there for 13 years. I taught special ed, I taught grades, I taught kindergarten, and then I taught in a first grade dual language classroom.
How long did you teach there?
13 years.
How did you come to work in Barrington?
I saw a posting on School Spring, and they were in need of a special educator, and it's really always been my dream to come back and teach in the town that my mother grew up in, I grew up in, my husband grew up in, his family grew up in. We have ties to this town, and I felt like it was meant to be.
When did you come to Barrington?
I actually started September 2020 teaching distance learning in Pawtucket, found out the position in September and applied and was hired and came October 5th, 2020.
So right at the height of the beginning of the pandemic.
Yes.
Do you have any idea that you'd be sitting here a year and a half later, being fired because you didn't take a vaccine because of this pandemic?
And the fact that I have poured my heart, blood, sweat, and tears into teaching in a different district who hasn't mentioned once about a vaccine mandate, to come here and to have my career destroyed is devastating, yes.
In fact, you came here as a non-tenured teacher. You gave up 13 years of tenure to come here, right?
Right, I did.
Who did you meet with when you were applying here?
I had an interview with Jim Callahan, and then I had an interview with Superintendent Missouri.
Were they obviously positive interviews?
Great interviews. Yeah.
They were happy to bring you on board.
Very much.
The principal that you mentioned, what was his name again?
Jim Callahan?
There's an evidence, some emails that you sent to Mr. Missouri regarding some concerns you had in September when you started hearing about, first heard about this vaccine mandate, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a conversation with your principal about that?
I did.
What was that conversation?
I had two very specific conversations with him. One, when I was notified by the union rep, I did go to him, and he said he had not heard any of that, said that accommodations would be put in place. And then I did call him very upset the night that I got news that my exemption was denied. And he again repeated, he had never talked to Superintendent Missouri about it. He was quite speechless. He did not know what to say. I was very upset on the phone, and he didn't know what to say.
So either Mr. Missouri lied when he testified that he questioned Mr. Callahan about your employment. Mr. Callahan lied to you when he said he hadn't had any communication.
Objection.
Correct.
Sustained.
Who do you believe?
Objection.
Sustained.
All right, Brittany, we're getting late. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I mean, again, this isn't, I just could have never imagined that this would be where I'm sitting right now, dealing with you here, and us being on the chopping block and being torn apart. We are educators. We are born with a love of teaching and educating children, and you have ripped that from us. Ripped that from us over something that makes zero sense. Zero. When you've had vaccinated staff spread COVID and shut down classrooms, let alone this entire school shut down, gone to distance learning because positive staff cases, all 100% vaccinated. You have zero justification to do what you're doing. And you sitting here picking us apart, ripping us apart over a career that we've dedicated to teaching and caring for children is disgusting. It's disgusting.
The witness's testimony with regard to counsel for the school department is stricken.
They'll follow the science, don't worry.
Why don't you look this way? We're the ones
Ms.
who think
Rappaport, do you have any questions?
Mr. Yari, I appreciate that you're angry and you're focusing on me. I'm going to ask you a few questions anyway.
Go ahead.
So you worked for a period of time in Pawtucket and worked with the children there.
I did.
Okay. And you've been suspended and then dismissed from this school district where you apparently had hopes of remaining forever, or at least
For the rest of my career. Correct.
And you're passionate about working with children with special educational needs. That's been your training, correct?
All children, yes.
Okay, but you're certified in special education?
I'm certified in many things. I did read the certifications,
Okay,
yes.
so what else other than special education?
Special ed, I'm certified as a regular classroom teacher. I'm certified in ESL, and I'm certified in bilingual dual language education.
Okay, and you know that Pawtucket, for example, doesn't have a vaccine mandate,
They don't.
and neither does Providence, right?
They don't.
And neither does Central Falls.
They don't.
Have you applied to any school districts?
I haven't applied
I'm
to
sorry,
school.
I didn't get the question.
Have you applied to any school districts to try to get employment for the remainder of the year?
I have not.
Do you intend to?
I have been looking, and either jobs are, I'm not qualified to, or certified to teach, excuse me, not qualified, I've been certified to teach. Either they're in older grades that I'm not qualified for or certified for.
So you've been looking, but you haven't actually filled out an application?
I have not.
Have you found any jobs out there for which you're qualified?
I have not.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
I have nothing further on that.
All right, now we're at the point of closing arguments, Ms. Bradford.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
It's your time for closing argument.
Are we doing closings?
Well, I have a brief closing.
Sure.
So I'll do a brief closing.
Please proceed.
So as Ms. Tebow made clear at the As Ms. Tebow made it clear at the beginning of this conversation, the issue here is not whether the vaccine mandate was a good idea or a bad idea, despite the understandable frustration that the particular individuals before you feel. The question that is in front of you in this proceeding is whether the basis for the termination conformed to the definition of good and just cause under the law. And that law is established as a body of law that emanates from the Department of Ed and other arbitral decisions. And a consistently upheld basis for terminating an employee, even on a single incident, is refusal to conform to a policy or regulation is the way the statute describes it, that is adopted by the school committee. Now you can quibble with whether that regulation was a good idea or a bad idea. You can have a lawsuit over it, but that's not what's before you. The question that's before this committee is whether its decision to impose a accommodation that was not solicited, namely a 2-month period of holding the job, followed by a dismissal if the individual remained unvaccinated, was a fair consequence, whether it was imposed in a way that provided sufficient notice to the individuals, and whether it was done in an arbitrary and capricious manner. Those are the issues that are in front of the committee. The evidence from Mr. Missouri provided overwhelming evidence of notice. There couldn't have been more notice and more consistent notice, short of having every individual enter Mr. Missouri's office and be individually told about what was going on. There was clear evidence that on the same day that the draft policy was approved by the subcommittee, it went directly to the leadership of the union. There was clear evidence that repeatedly in the protocols, which were linked to the communications, which protocols were regularly viewed by staff, there was description of the vaccine mandate. There's clear, undisputed evidence that in the letter of September 20, there were links not only to the policy itself, but to the particular compliance form that was used by the Department of Health to the portal for updating folks about the vaccination. And there was clear notice in the communication of October 18 that the vaccine mandate was a mandate, and that if the individuals did not obtain the vaccination by November 1st, there would be a termination. The issue of the implementation of the exemptions is privileged in the sense that there was an executive session to which the public is not privy about a law. That law is Title VII, and that is not also a subject for discussion here. The question is whether the exemptions were reviewed and whether they were reviewed with fairness and with openness and with a reasonable and principled basis for denial. And that is something that could be adjudicated in another forum. But the only question under Title VII, but the only question in front of this committee is whether he actually did review the exemptions and did take them seriously. These two individuals, one of whom regrettably Mr. Picciarelli has cast aspersion on. I think that the issue of whether a vaccine mandate protected this community is not really in front of you. We realize that this is a difficult decision, but the evidence overwhelmingly supports the notion that, not the notion, but the reality that the vaccine mandate was promulgated to these individuals, and despite repeated notice and opportunity, they did not take the vaccine. That is a decision that they made to determine to not take the vaccine. It's not a coercive act to require it. If there is employment elsewhere, that's a prerogative. But that is not the subject of this conversation. Whether this committee should have adopted a policy of this rigor is not for the conversation today. So we urge you to uphold your original decision and leave intact the efforts that have ensued through the superintendent and his staff to find highly qualified replacements. Thank you.
Mr. Picciarelli.
Thank you. Members of the committee, I'm here in a kind of an awkward situation, and so are you, because of the way the law is written in Rhode Island. The way it's written is you make a decision to fire someone, and then we have to come back to you and ask you to admit you were wrong. That's really tough for most people. You make a decision, and you feel bound by the decision you made. The benefit of having a delay between October and now is a lot's happened since then. I didn't get into evidence. I'm not going to argue with it. Well, not being allowed to have that put in, but you know the reality of what's changed in the last few months. You know the Department of Health has dropped the healthcare mandate for healthcare workers, the vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. You know that people are getting their jobs back that have been fired for not taking the vaccine. The world has changed. It's changed rapidly. It's okay to say, you know what, maybe we overreacted. Maybe we were too harsh when this all started. Maybe we got advice from people that we want to reconsider. This is your opportunity to do that. When John and Sarah and Christine, when we stopped practicing labor law, Caroline. When we started practicing labor law, especially in the education context, one of the things we learned is that termination is the equivalent of capital punishment. It's a capital punishment. for their career. And it should only be used for people who commit capital crimes. Is the refusal to take this vaccine because of a sincerely held religious belief a capital crime? We don't think so. We hope we don't think so. I could go through cases, I could argue statutes. I'm not going to debate that with you now. What's the purpose? You know what our legal position is. I'm sure you've been advised by your counsel many times about what your legal potential liabilities are and what your strengths are. So I'm not going to insult your intelligence or waste time arguing that now. I'm simply going to appeal to your good common sense and decency to reconsider what you've done to these people. That's all. I have nothing.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's 10:49. Our stenographer has indicated that she is only able to stay, and we appreciate very much her efforts tonight, doing a difficult job, till 11 o'clock. Which means that after 11 o'clock, we do not have a transcript, and both parties are entitled under state law to have a transcript. The question becomes for both parties, how do you wish to proceed?
I don't know that the law requires.
I don't know that the law requires the transcript to include, well, obviously the deliberations are going to be separate.
Right.
You're just going to come out and vote. I would certainly be willing to waive the requirement of a transcript for that vote. I don't know if you have a clerk that can do it, or somebody will have to be designated as the clerk to take the vote. But I really would like to get this done tonight.
Yeah, the stenographer wouldn't be participating in deliberations anyway.
So is it my understanding then, Ms. Rapport, that you are also waiving the stenographer once the school committee goes into deliberations, comes out of deliberations, and takes a vote?
Yeah, I think your statutory obligation ends when you end the evidence. And then, and to the extent it doesn't, I think you can excuse the stenographer.
I just want to make sure that both sides are waiving.
Yeah, and I would agree. And again, if you could just identify someone who would act as the clerk to take the roll call vote.
I will take the vote.
Then I would agree with that.
If I have to. Okay, then at this point, the school committee is going to recess to executive session to deliberate, and then they will return and make a motion.
And is the stenographer able, I think you want to just...
Yes, the stenographer is excused at this point. Thank you so much. Well,
Unless you vote in 5 minutes.
the stenographer is excused. Thank you so much.